But this bill in Congress that's heading up to the Senate is not the only psychotic piece of legislation that's come out lately. Now, I didn't know this, but I read in a recent Substack post by Li Fong about it kind of details all of the different legislative efforts to tamp down on criticism of Israel that have occurred in the past few months. There's one here in New York State that is put forth, has a bunch of co-sponsors on it. And I just want you to read this psychotic legislation right here.
Enacts the New York State Anti-Semitism Vandalism Act, which establishes the crime of vandalism of pro-Israel print, which provides a Class A misdemeanor for any individual who intentionally destroys, damages, removes, or causes to be destroyed, damaged, or remove any banner, poster, flyer, or billboard which is located in a public space where the intent or purpose of such banner, poster, flyer, or billboard is to bring awareness for Israeli individuals who have been victims of a crime or to positively support the country or citizens of Israel in any way. I mean, all things aside, there's a lot to talk about there, but what is anyone who causes any individual who causes wants something to be destroyed? What does that mean?
Well, what does it mean? Bring awareness for Israeli individuals who have been victims of a crime. So, let's say an Israeli individual comes to New York City and maybe goes to the dance club at night and hits somebody. And they put up I don't understand it. Is it, you're talking specifically about the hostage posters, but they don't say that.
Well, it's the hostage posters, and then it's any kind of poster that positively supports the country or the citizens of Israel in any way, anyone can become a citizen of Israel if they're Jewish, so.
I guess my question here is, can you think of any laws or legislation like this? Anything comparable to this?
No, we were talking about that. Thinking of a historic example that you can draw parallels to, I legitimately can't.
Yeah.
Setting even aside the comparison to a foreign country, the only thing that I can think of is the early 20th century Red Scare laws that targeted anyone that had any sort of positive affiliation or perceived positive affiliation with the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
That's the only thing that I can think of that went that far in terms of attempting to tamp down and target. But it's an inverse of that.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Because you can't talk shit about this. That's the thing. Famously, during the both of the Red Scares, it was essentially verboten to speak even positively in a liberal sort of way,
right,
in terms of coexistence with the Soviet Union and then China. They took away Paul Robeson is an excellent sort of very clear example of this kind of stuff. Took away his passport, prevented him from traveling, didn't want him to speak, cancel all his gigs, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Now someone who, of course, and this is how it always goes, lauded for his incredibly brave political speech.
Of course, yeah. But I can't think of an example where it's illegal to talk shit on a country. Now, this is what is really surprising to me about this, and not surprising, actually, I shouldn't say that at all, but really, frankly, and I mean this sincerely, very shocking and appalling about this kind of legislation. One of the things that I've been really, really, really uneasy with as a Jew, I hate saying that kind of shit, but from my perspective, as an individual with a large nose and a rude personality, is that in the wake of October 7th, the amount of peculiar or unique support that I would say that Israel has received from our government, I don't know how to say this other than, and you don't have to comment, but it essentially is like an anti-Semite's wet dream. You know what I mean? The Jews control everything. Well, now it's illegal to talk shit about them. Jews control everything. You're gonna get fired if you fucking if you talk about Israel in any way. It's I don't know how else to say it. I mean, maybe that's a weird way to phrase it or whatever, but it makes me sick to see this kind of shit.
I was thinking about that with regards to, this is sort of, in the same vein, with Dana Bash, right? She gave that insane monologue on CNN. Maybe we can play a clip of it here.
Making Jewish students feel unsafe at their own schools is unacceptable, and it is happening way too much right now. What you just saw is 2024 in Los Angeles, harkening back to the 1930s in Europe, and I do not say that lightly. The fear among Jews in this country is palpable right now.
And she basically, is making a very direct comparison. I mean, she just says that, what's happening here is just like Nazi Germany, meaning that the kids on these campuses are Nazis. I mean, it's like an absurd comparison.
Absurd comparison.
But, thinking about like, I don't know, like someone needs, I don't know how to say this, but like what happens to, we've talked a lot about historical memory and the complicated sustaining historical memory and preserving and defending historical memory, how important that is to a culture. We talked about that in the case of the Philippines, right?
Yeah.
And how it was been weaponized and kind of turned against itself and all of these things with the Marcos regime. And it's, I was listening to Dana Bash give that, go on that tirade or whatever, and I'm just like, what happens to the Holocaust, like, after this? Like, what happens to how does a generation seeing how the Holocaust has been weaponized in this way divorce the fungibility of that from that? Like, how do you preserve the horror of that now that it's been made fungible and now that it's been instrumentalized to such a like grotesque end? And that to me is like very scary, like that, and very upsetting. And like, I don't know what kind of political project that entails, but it feels like a very uphill battle, and it hasn't even begun yet.
Well, it's really, you can't separate it from Israel and pro-Israel people's war to weaponize essentially every part of Jewish history, every part of Jewish suffering in the defense of this state, and particularly in defense of this state's right to kill or do whatever they want to the Palestinians. That's really what it is. So I agree with you wholeheartedly.